Hello, welcome to another Purple Insider Extra. Matthew Coller and Sam Ekstrom here following the Vikings' 33-6 loss to the Denver Broncos here from US Bank Stadium. And Sam, it was exciting to have preseason football, but that's where it ended. As soon as the kickoff was over, the excitement ended for Vikings fans who decided to come out for their first game inside US Bank Stadium since 2019. Where do you want to begin? I think we have to start with Mike Zimmer after the game being, I would describe him as infuriated with the effort today.
Yeah, Mike Zimmer was surly, to put it mildly. He was mad at halftime, and he was mad after the game. The second half did nothing to improve his mood. There really weren't a lot of pros. There were many, many cons. And I think the biggest issue he took was a lot of these players that struggled today are fringe roster players, many of whom might actually contribute this season or are in important roster battles. It wasn't like the Evan Kazarcheks and the Warren Jacksons of the world were the ones struggling. It was guys like Cameron Dantzler, Dakota Dozier, Miles Dorn, Brandon Dillon, like guys who have a case to make this team, and I think they all kind of hurt their stock today.
All right, let's talk about Kellen Mond and the amount that he played. We weren't sure if he was going to get in the game or not, and instead he came in right after Jake Browning's pick six, which we could circle back to, and then played the entire rest of the game. He ends up going 6 for 16 with 53 yards, and Mike Zimmer after the game basically said he's got to pick it up. He used the word slow motion for the third time in talking about Kellen Mond, and he talked about even his personality of being able to get the guys on the same page, get the play calls in, get everyone lined up. We saw 2 different instances of 2-minute drives for Kellen Mond in which there just wasn't a whole lot of pace. But also Kellen Mond missed time being on the COVID list and hasn't been able to practice a whole heck of a lot. So how do we assess Kellen Mond's day with the criticism of the head coach, but also the circumstances that he was under?
He was really thrown into the fire here. He had 2 padded practices against another opponent to get ready for today. Mike Zimmer, didn't really hold him back. Now that we see that he played 2.5 quarters, I think there was reason to believe he wouldn't play in this game because of how little time he had. And Mike Zimmer said, hey, you missed 10 days. You got to get back up to speed, man. And there was a quote, I think on Thursday, where he said, Kellen needs a ton of reps because he's so far behind. They gave him a ton of reps. And it didn't go particularly well. Less than 2 yards per attempt today. I thought some of his throws under pressure were pretty poor. Only 2 throws really stood out to me as good throws, where he connected with Brandon Dillon over the middle and nearly hit Whop Phillier for a touchdown. But I guess you can get excited about his mobility. He does have that part of his game, much, much better than Kirk Cousins. But he needs to round it out with a lot more poise, a lot more command, a lot more accuracy and decision making. After the game, though, Kellen didn't seem that concerned about some of those things. It came across as a very odd press conference after we heard from dejected Mike Zimmer, dejected Jake Browning. Oh, optimistic Kellen Mond. It was a little bit strange and came across kind of just hit our ears kind of weird in the press conference room, didn't it?
Yeah, I think you saw from Kellen Mond a couple of throws that had some zip on them and certainly the mobility, but you didn't see someone who was confident in what they were doing. There was a lot of drop back, sort of look around a little and then take off. And when he did have opportunities to make some big plays, he overthrew Brandon Dillon by quite a bit in the end zone. Could have had a touchdown pass there. It was a nice pass to Whop Phillier in the back of the end zone, but even that he described as kind of, he looked to his left, he didn't find what he wanted, was looking back, and it was sort of a scrambly type of play. We saw a lot of that from him. Now, on the matter of Jake Browning throwing the pick six, Mike Zimmer was very critical of that too, and Jake Browning was critical of it himself. He talked about how he should have known that the cornerback, Patrick Surtain, was looking for that type of route. It was clear Patrick Surtain was jumping the route, and Jake Browning doesn't have the arm strength to throw it into a situation where the corner is jumping it. And he said even a perfect throw would have gotten knocked away anyway. But I think that as much as Jake Browning has performed up to snuff in practice and did a good job keeping the train on the tracks, there's still got to be some nervousness here for a guy who has not ever started an NFL game, was on the practice squad for 2 years, being one close contact away from having to start games. I think you saw here why they would be nervous about that.
Yeah, he didn't do much in getting the ball downfield except for one throw that generated a defensive pass interference call. But I do consider, too, with Browning, he didn't play in any game situation last year. Obviously, Cousins played in the season, Mond played his college season. Browning didn't have anything in 2020. No preseason games, didn't play in the regular season. So I understand why he might have some rust in a situation like this. But I think we still just know some things to be true about Jake Browning, is that the arm strength isn't going to be outstanding, which we saw in the pick six, and the mobility isn't that great either. So you've got to be extraordinary with the passing part of the game if you're not going to be a mobile quarterback. And Browning still has a ways to go in that regard. I think he does know how to make a lot of those simple throws most of the time, knows how to get guys lined up at the line of scrimmage. So there are good things. But I liked his press conference. He came out very self-aware, seemed pretty motivated, had strong words to say about what he wants to accomplish this week. And it sounds like Mike Zimmer is really going to work him hard in practice and try to simulate, a scrimmage with today's offense against today's defense and see if they can improve.
Now, on the matter of the offensive line, we were hoping for some answers today. Very interesting that Oli Udoh didn't play at all, which I think tells us that he is locked in that spot. So initially at the start of camp, we wondered, is this just an experiment to see if he could play? Well, if it was, it seems to be working. But to not play Oli Udoh was really interesting because this is a guy who has never played in actual game action at guard, and they foregoed an opportunity to give him that chance today to play Dakota Dozier, who in his first 3 drives had a pressure allowed, a holding that resulted in a safety, and then jumped off sides, which, has sort of been par for the course for a veteran player that's proven to be much more of a backup than he is an NFL starter. But the offensive line as a whole, we saw what's one layer down from the starting group, and I think it was as concerning as we would have expected. If you were hoping for someone to rise to the challenge as the backup group, we have not seen that, and even Wyatt Davis did not get in the game until the 4th drive, I think, or 5th drive. So it took a while to even get the 3rd round pick into the game.
And didn't look very good as well in pass protection. When you put out a starting line with the names of Brandel, Samia, Cole, Zach Bailey, and Dakota Dozier, you hope that the veteran Dozier can kind of be the stabilizing force there. And I walked away saying, you know what, 4/5 of that line did okay. Dakota Dozier was a weak spot. And that's someone who allegedly is in the mix to be your starter at right guard. That's concerning. We don't know the situation with Rashad Hill's health, but he got dinged up in the joint practices. Could we see first-team reps with Blake Brandel out there next week? We might. So there's plenty of reason for concern on that offensive line right now. I think it's a little bit indicative of a questionable off-season approach that more help wasn't brought in to address those guard spots, because what choice do the Vikings have at guard? If Wyatt Davis is struggling, they can't put him out there. He's so young. Drew Samia has proven that he probably isn't the best. And, Dakota Dozier, I guess, has the veteran status going for him, but even he doesn't look good at right guard. So they're so thin right now at guard, and they're crossing their fingers that Oli Udoh is going to be good when he just transitioned to the position himself, and they're too nervous about that depth to even play him in this game, which I think is an interesting decision in itself.
So along the lines of things that went sideways today, Kene Nwangwu also got hurt. He's been one of the most exciting players in training camp. Mike Zimmer didn't seem to think it was serious, but it's a knee injury. And also Cam Smith got a concussion. He's been coming back from that heart surgery he had last year and was actually working his way into what seemed like it could be a run-stuffing role. So now they're going to be even shorter at a position that has already been troublesome for them. And Troy Dye had a pretty rough day today. Missed an assignment, missed a tackle that resulted in a big play from the Denver Broncos. So tough day all around. They did make their kicks, though, but not so much their punts. Mike Zimmer called out the issues with punting as well. So let me just throw this out there for you, since this has been over 9 minutes of everything went wrong in this game, which 33-6 it most certainly did. Give me how much you think we should react to this game. Give me like a 1 to 10. How much should you be concerned or reacting to this game? And then maybe throw out there someone who played well. today.
Yeah, I think it's about a 5 out of 10. I mean, I don't think the starting group gets beat 33-6. I think when 21 of 22 starters are out, that does impact things considerably. But if you look at Vikings teams of the past, they've always had to rely on some important backups, whether that's Anthony Harris coming in, Eric Wilson, Case Keenum at quarterback even, Jerick McKinnon at running back, BC Johnson at wide receiver. There's countless examples, and right now the depth of this team at tons of positions, they're one injury away from having to play someone that's concerningly young or inexperienced or just outright bad. And that is a problem, because if Mike Zimmer doesn't trust his depth, that affects his in-season coaching decisions. It impacts the rotations he uses, the amount that he leans on some of the veterans, maybe to a fault. And yeah, that does impact the team. So I think it's a 5. It's not everything. It's not nothing. Somebody that looked good. Did you call out Patrick Jones in this video?
We have not.
The two rookie defensive ends, Patrick Jones, Janarius Robinson, we haven't talked about them much at all in camp, and they both had multiple splashy plays in the second half, a batted pass, TFLs, both looked really good. So I guess you can be encouraged by that. A couple draft picks making some plays.
Yeah, I also would go with 5 out of 10. It's not that the world is coming to an end here. I think that this just shined a light on the lack of depth that they had. And when you see Mike Zimmer react the way that he did to this loss, I think it showed some of his concerns about these players. And he said he's going to, throw them out there in scrimmages this week because he is worried about the depth. So if he's saying that, I feel like we kind of have to react off of that. I was going to say Patrick Jones. He had a couple of times where he broke through into the backfield for tackles for loss or caused tackles for loss. And how about A.J. Rose? Hey, there's always a running back who's fighting to make the team. A.J. Rose ran for 100 yards today on a lot of work when the other team knew it was coming every time. And I'll give KJ Osborne credit for a couple of decent kick returns. That kick return battle ongoing still, so he gets some credit for that.
Didn't hurt his stock.
Did not hurt his stock. But a tough day overall for the Minnesota Vikings. They'll get back to practice next week. Training camp is officially over, so they're just in practice mode. We'll be doing videos every day from there as well. So we'll catch you then. And if you want our written work and reactions to this game, purpleinsider.substack.com, the Purple Insider podcast, a longer conversation about how Mike Zimmer has become the central character now of this football team. So we'll catch you later here on Purple Insider.